Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global Character Day. I am so excited to be sitting here and interviewing Dr. Nelly Farnoody Zahiri. How are you, Nelly?
I'm doing great, Mackenzie. Nice to be with you.
Yes, nice to be with you as well. Before we get into the interview, I just wanted to make a couple quick announcements. For all of you out there watching today and joining into the Character Day festivities, I wanted to remind you all that we have an awesome ambassador program that we started for Character Day people this year. It's grown to a couple hundred members throughout all different countries around the world. We've been hosting monthly conference calls and sharing best practices and resources, and really just bringing a community of thought leaders into this space around character development and social emotional learning. So if you haven't gotten a chance, please do go to Facebook and find us at Character Day Ambassadors, and I'll be more than happy to accept your request. Nelly is actually one of our amazing ambassadors and has done an amazing job sharing Character Day wide and far. So we really appreciate that, Nelly.
Thanks.
So let's get started. I'm just going to read your bio really quickly. Dr. Nelly Farnoody Zahiri is a keynote speaker and a world-renowned clinical psychologist who specializes in working with children and families. Her expertise is in the area of mindfulness, Eastern and Western integration, cross-cultural psychology, and conscious and peace learning parenting. She's the author and founder of the International Center for Peace Learning Parenting and the popular Mom Talk LA TV show at Andeshe TV. And I'd just like to say we have a long-standing relationship with Nelly, and Tiffany and I have been on Mom Talk a couple of times, which has been so much fun. So welcome, Nelly.
Thank you, Mackenzie. So good to be here.
Yes, and you have a special hello to your audience today. Why don't you go ahead?
Great. I thought since we have a bilingual community or multilingual community, but I speak two languages, English and Farsi. So hello, everyone in English, and Durud bar shoma in Farsi.
I love it. So that's a great way to start off with my first question, which is, how do you see the East and the West approaching character education differently, and what are some of the similarities?
Yeah, I think if we tap into sort of the historical, I know you guys are big on history and going back to the roots of things. I think tapping into historically how the educational systems were founded, of course, traditionally in the Eastern worlds, there was more focus on interdependence and the communal self in the context of education. So I think in cultivating character within the Eastern methodology or educational system, definitely there is more focus on the team, the tribal, the family's connection to community. And Hazel Rose Marcus at Stanford University has done tremendous work in this field and showing how Eastern philosophies have more of a tendency to gravitate towards developing the communal self, which naturally has interdependency at the base of it, and perhaps more potential in the growth mindset as it relates to empathy, connection, and perhaps what we could focus on in terms of focusing on positive characteristics and attributes and positive psychology. Where in the West, we have this wonderful focus on individualism. Certainly autonomy is huge. You know, we want to cultivate children to grow up to be independent thinkers, to be autonomous, I know in our household, it's a constant struggle in sort of honoring autonomy, but also honoring interdependency and that style of relatedness. And it comes from, you know, having the two cultures in my background. And also, living in a world now today that we are thriving. We're moving towards more integration between the two systems. But certainly in my work as a clinical psychologist, I encourage this development as part of character development in our therapeutic process and within families. We start off with evaluating, assessing early on where the person identifies with, pretty much similar to your periodic table, you know, the character traits. And we focus on how the individual can benefit from experiencing more equanimity and balance in their self-growth and development. So even though we have our tendencies, but I think as human beings, we thrive to come to a point of balance that we can relate to both sides. We want to be individualistic, we want to be autonomous, but we also want to keep our connections and our connectedness.
Nelly, do you have right off the top of your head any, one activity for one or the other? So if I'm more of a inward facing person or, more communal, are there certain activities that you typically recommend as starting points for our audience?
I certainly believe, attending multicultural celebrations, especially of the Eastern worlds, that's always been one of my favorites. You know, when I'm in it, connecting to other peoples of similar mindset and just having those belly to belly experiences. There's nothing more encouraging, inspiring, and cultivating of character than having those face-to-face human connections. And so going to events, I think having an open heart and an open mind and an open soul and really allowing it to sink in, let it marinate, sit with it, and without judgment. I think being in a space of self-compassion, being in a space where we're really allowing this growth process and this love of learning to cultivate in our character. That's certainly one of our favorites, and I always try to encourage it with families and the people that I'm talking to or having new experiences.
And I love that you brought up self-compassion, and we had a great chit chat before this Q&A came on live. Can you share your experience that you had Character Day at your Curtis School this morning?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I started this morning. I have to say I woke up really early because I wanted to watch the film right off off the grid. So I watched it. The first time I cried, I was sobbing. It was beautiful. It was moving. I watched it several times. And then I dropped off the kids at Curtis. Then we went to the PA meeting and our parent enrichment group and the moms who had showed up, the parents who were there. And then we watched it together. And again, we were crying and we were moved and inspired by your film. And the 3,000 days. But right away, we started worrying with this angst, this, oh my gosh, first of all, how many days do we have left? Let's calculate this. Let's get into the math of it.
It's interesting.
Like, well, I have 14,000 days.
Yeah, it's interesting because it depends on who you ask. Some people think that's a really long time, and some people say, oh, shoot, time's ticking.
Right. So our mathematical mind started calculating, and then we went into, as a group, we started noticing our weaknesses first. So, I'm not very good with self-control, or I'm not very good. And then that grew into this bigger conversation about self-compassion and how perhaps if we cultivate self-compassion in our community, we will all benefit from that, both personally. So speaking of that individual and communally as a community, because then we will have more forgiveness. We'll be easier on each other. We won't judge as much. And we're cultivating peace and character and empathy and all those good stuff that I think we're intentionally trying to get to. I think that's certainly my calling.
Absolutely. And I kind of just had that big aha moment because as we've been watching all of these social media posts pouring throughout the day since our campaign is we're having everyone take a picture and writing down what the world needs more of right now. And a big trend that's been happening today is a lot of people have been saying empathy and compassion and forgiveness. And I just love what you came to the conclusion of, is that having self-compassion for ourselves, because everything in our life is a mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can have compassion for yourself, there's a greater opportunity for you to have compassion for others, to be open to other cultures, other ages, new ideas. So I really
Right on.
that. Yeah, right on. Speaking of different cultures, and then, different ideas, let's talk about age for a minute. So you work a lot with parents, and was wondering, how do parents and children come about working with mindfulness? How is that different from working with adults?
Yeah, I have to say, children, in my experience, are much more conscious and mindful than we are. I think we are socialized, or we lose our connection to ourselves, our inner connection to self, and that conscious space because of, whatever, aging. So the little ones, actually, they get it. They are much better in being present in the moment and being mindful. I think it's us, the grown-ups, who are not connecting to their level of consciousness and their mindfulness. So I think one of the things that we often come to conclude at the end of a session, or a peace learning parenting consultation, is let's look at those opportunities, those yes moments where you can really be present in what your child is interested in doing, or their passion or their grit, and what they're in when they come alive. So I know you're big on finding your calling and your passion, and look at these character traits and what stands out to you, and then pursue it and achieve it, and move into that yes space. Yes, and right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so for parents to lower their expectations, to enter this zone where they're more aware and conscious of just being without having to do, because we're so conditioned and programmed into doing all the time. I mean, I'm one of them. I'm the first one to raise my hand. I'm a really awful robot that way. But the human condition of connecting and really being present is very important. And so we have to, every day, every moment, remind ourselves. That's what I do constantly. I have to remind myself, okay, well, it's okay to let go right now and not be so persistent, because you have to get this task done. And I know it's a balancing act, because there are certain tasks that just have to get done. But reminding ourselves as parents, and again, having self-compassion and listening to our kids to lead in that way, because oftentimes I've been wonderfully surprised when I enter that space of the unknown, where they're playing and having an amazing time, presence. And I was watching and being critical and judgmental from an outer space. And I think if we become more self-compassionate and just play, enter their zone and give them an opportunity to breathe, to connect to their breath, to be more present in the moment, that is cultivating mindfulness. And it's a day by day process. I think for many parents, when we first start the journey, it's scary because, of the self-criticism. We oftentimes judge ourselves, we blame ourselves. And then when we learn about mindfulness, and oh my goodness, I'm not being mindful, or I haven't been mindful. And I think that's toxic. Letting go of those yes.
I'm so sorry, but we have to actually be mindful of the time. And I hate to cut you off. It has been
I
such
love
a pleasure
it.
speaking with you. I could just speak with you all day.
Such a pleasure talking to you, and I love what you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you so much, Nelly. We will be in touch, and we are so grateful to have you as an ambassador and as a partner of Character Day. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.